Hey y'all, Jonathan McGarry here, and this is Off the Page, Genesis chapter 17. And this is what God caused to jump off the page to me today as I read this chapter several times. Chapter 17 tells us about the details of God's covenant with Abram, as well as God's changing the name of Abram to Abraham and his wife Sarai to Sarah. It is also about the promise of Isaac, the son that would be born to Abraham and Sarah. What jumped off the page to me in this chapter surrounded the covenant that God made with Abraham. We often focus on the promises of God in the covenant. The promise to make Abraham the father of nations, the promise of Isaac, the giving of the land of Canaan as a home for Abraham and his descendants, and the instituting of the circumcision as the mark of the covenant. But what jumped off the page to me was what God expected from Abraham. God expected something from Abraham in his end of the agreement. And God expects something from you and me. He expected Abraham to live a godly life. The word perfect here does not mean literally perfect, for that would have been impossible, but rather a different life, living and obeying God's way and instructions, and to pass on God's instructions to his descendants down the line. He expected them to obey in marking himself and each male child by circumcision. It was a sign that they would be obedient and marked them as different and set them apart from all other peoples living in the world. Following these expectations would not be easy, but it would be possible. Today is not always easy to follow God's expectations for us and to be called out separate, peculiar people we are to be for God as his witnesses and his possession. But it is possible through Christ's work and his strength. These expectations have nothing to do with our salvation, which we could never earn, nor are they followed to keep or deserve God's salvation and presence in our lives, but rather because we belong to him and he does keep us and go with us, they are our rightful obedience. If we've been saved, then God has expectations for you and for me. And what God calls us to, he will always enable us to follow. So did you see what I saw? Did God show you something new, something different, or something else? Seek God by reading his word. After all, the whole purpose of reading his word is to seek God, to know God, and to have a relationship with God. Let God speak to you today. Until next time, remember, I love you. More importantly, God loves you. Keep your eyes on him.